Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This video is part 2 on how to chase fall foliage in New England. This is going to be the Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York edition. So I decided to make a second edition of chasing the fall foliage because some of you guys have been reaching out to me asking me some questions that I need to clarify for my last video. To recap, we started off our trip on October 2nd and we spent 3 weeks chasing the foliage. I flew into Boston and from there we went straight to upstate New York, and from there we went to Vermont and New Hampshire, and we went back and forth from Vermont and New Hampshire like every 2 or 3 days. If you are deciding to chase the fall foliage, that your itinerary will probably change by the day. We didn't have a specific route, but we had places that we want to see just because we couldn't predict the foliage. In this video, I am going to share my route with you. I'm making this video like a year after we went to chase the foliage, so I might have 1 or 2 places that are off, but because everything was pretty much 2 to 3 hours away from each other, we didn't really have a problem driving so much. On average, every day, I want to say we drove at least maybe 4 hours or so. And if you are planning on chasing the fall foliage this year, check out my Instagram. I have made an Instagram guide on some of the photography spots that I did go to for some inspiration for your trip. If you are planning on chasing fall foliage this year and you have not seen my last video, I wanted to reiterate on 3 points that I mentioned in my last video because I think they are still very important. I'll also link my last video in the description below, so don't forget to check that out. The first one is to plan at least 2 days in advance. There's gonna be so many times where you're just gonna wanna pull over your car to the side and take your photos. We've done that so many times that sometimes it's hard to follow just one itinerary. And for that reason, it's important for you to try to plan a route for at least 2 days. Now again, the colors don't peak at the same time every year, but it's so important that you're constantly checking Instagram stories. I do understand that some of you guys do have limited PTO days and you really need to plan for your trip because you need to put in your PTO hours, but the best advice I can probably give you is to start checking the foliage cams about 2 to 3 weeks prior to October, so maybe mid-August, and then just let your boss know that, hey, these are the dates that I'm eyeing on chasing the fall foliage. I don't know when exactly I'll leave, but I just want to let you know just in case I do take off these days last minute. This was actually the case for some of us last year because Derek and Kate also have a 9-to-5 job, so we had to work around their schedule and we want to make sure that they were able to catch the fall foliage while working at the same time. The second point I want to reiterate was how important housing and accommodations are. The only days we really had booked were the first 3 days. We were traveling for 3 weeks, but we were able to find somewhere to stay every single night. We either booked the night before or the day of, and we didn't have a problem booking hotels at all. On average, you're gonna be spending about $80 to $150, but if I could recommend, and if you can get a hand of an RV, I would highly recommend that you do so. I think that is actually the best way on capturing the fall foliage because there's going to be some days where you don't know where the colors are peaking and you don't want to drive hours just to realize that you might have to backtrack. Now for the fun part, what to see in New England. So in this video, I'm going to be covering spots that you might want to see in Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York. And also before I do go into the spots to visit, I just want to remind you that if you are visiting these spots, that you don't litter, that you don't leave any of your trace behind. Okay, so in this video, again, I do want to share my route with you guys. And I will say that it wasn't the perfect route, but it helped that everybody was so flexible with their schedules because, again, we just didn't know and we couldn't predict when the colors were going to peak. So when we drove into Boston, we drove straight up to upstate New York, and the first thing that we did was Trail Explorers in the Catskills. We had no idea that you had to get tickets, but luckily for us, there were 2 spots that were open because somebody canceled. This is an 8-mile activity. Round trip, it'll take you about 2.5 hours. So just make sure that you're getting your SWAT game on because you will be pedaling for a very long time. Now the Rail Explorers is actually only open from the spring to the fall, and it's $42.50 per person, but it is worth the trip. The next spot is visiting Lake Placid. Now this is such a cute town with beautiful views of Mirror Lake. Mirror Lake was my favorite photography spot there, and it was perfect because there were no winds and we were able to get pictures of the town and the mountains in the back with the foliage. Now I can't believe that I grew up 4 hours away from the spot and I've never gone there until last year. Hiked the Adirondack Mountains. I will say that it probably was my favorite spot in the entire trip. This hike is quite long. Round trip, it's 11 miles. This hike is not 11 miles steep, but there's a long path to just walk and you're kind of like, when is this ever gonna end? But make sure that if you're trying to go and catch sunset there, that you go early because there's very limited parking and the parking ranger will ticket you. And then I believe the next morning we went over to Vermont. We stayed around Stowe. We hung out around Stowe for a bit and then picked up Kate. Stowe is a staple of Vermont. It's a cute little town, and you've probably seen pictures of the white church there. And when you're there, don't forget to check out Montvert Cafe. Their maple lattes are to die for. For sunrise, we went to go shoot Sleepy Hollow Farm. Sleepy Hollow Farm is the most popular spot to visit when catching fall foliage in New England. No matter what day that you go, it's going to be packed. I think we've gone there like 3 times, and every single time, even on the weekdays, we saw at least 25 to 30 people just hovering over each other's backs and trying to get their shots of Sleepy Hollow. So just make sure that if you are going to go as early as you can, there is a good amount of parking there, but you're probably gonna be hovering your camera over people's shoulders to get your shots. And then heading over to New Hampshire, because Kate and Derek were working, Makito and I went to go hike the Crawford Notch Mountains. The views of the mountains were just absolutely beautiful. This was not a hard hike. Round trip, it was 3.2 miles. And it's not really too steep, but there are a lot of rocks. So make sure that you have your hiking shoes. And then the next day, we went over to downtown Burlington in Vermont. And this was actually the only hotel that we booked before the trip. And we stayed there for 3 nights. Some of us ate at the Church Street Tavern. And then at night, when everybody was just too tired, I actually went to this bar by myself. I believe it's called the Red Square Vermont. And it was just so nice. This DJ was just playing music and I was the only one there just jamming out. She said, no, she sees the vision go. I believe the next day we went over to Central Cafe in Vermont. We toured around Flume Gorge. We stayed at Flume Gorge for quite a bit. And round trip, it is a 1.5 mile trail. You probably know this spot for the red little house, not house, it's like a red roof photo. You will need to get tickets prior to going. Ticket prices are right here. And then the next morning, we went to go catch sunrise at Artist Bluff. We went there when it was pitch darkness, and obviously because everybody was following me, that we got lost. It's not a hard hike, I'm just really directionally challenged. But there were 2 ways to get to the viewpoint. I obviously took the long way. The short way, I believe, takes only 10 to 15 minutes to hike. And then after that, we headed over to this hotel in Meredith called Mills Falls. This was a beautiful hotel, and we stayed there on purpose just because it's right by a lake, and we wanted to see if we were able to catch the reflection shots of the houses at the lake. And then the next day, we caught sunrise at Cafe Lafayette. Cafe Lafayette is a sunrise spot, so you want to make sure that you get there early enough in order to get the sunburst with the train tracks. After going to these spots, I sometimes think, and I'm like, how did people find these locations? After that, we ate at Flapjacks, and their M&M pancakes are just so good. You guys have to go. And then the next morning, again, we went back to Sleepy Hollow Farm because we couldn't get the shot that we wanted. Ideally, we wanted a shot of a Sleepy Hollow Farm with low fog. We couldn't get the low fog shot again, but that's totally okay. The fog is also unpredictable too, and there will be some times where you just might be fogged out. One of my friends actually went to Sleepy Hollow Farm and the entire place was fogged out, but just having the right amount of fog is perfect. Dominguez Highway. This highway is 35 miles long, and if you go during the peak seasons, it will get busy and there is a lot of traffic. There were so many times we just pulled over to the side of the road, and every time we pulled off to the side of the road, it actually took us 20 minutes because we were trying to dodge the cars. Mount Washington Cog Railway. If we did plan a little bit earlier, the The one thing I wish that we did was to book tickets to ride this train. If you're planning on riding the train, just note that tickets are $41 for adults and $29 for kids. And the train departs from Watkins station. But if you're here to shoot the train, check the train times and to get to the spot at least 30 minutes early, because if you don't get there early enough, you're gonna miss the train, and the train doesn't run that frequently. We didn't realize that it was a little bit of a hike, so we were all running, and to be quite frank, not all of us made it to take the photos. And then after that, we went over to Sherry Madam Forest. It's just random stairs in the middle of the woods. And you're probably like, where is this coming from? But apparently the stairs are there because in 1962, Madame Sherry's house burned down, and the stairs are the remnants of the house. And just note that when you're there, it will get busy and there will probably be a lot of people trying to take pictures on the stairs, but just be patient. Just be patient. And then the next morning, we went to go shoot at a random lake, and we drove through Springfield, Massachusetts. For sunset, we went to go to Mount Sugarloaf. And then obviously all throughout the trip, we probably had Dunkin' like every other day. I don't think Makito has ever had Dunkin' before in his life, and he just got so hooked on Dunkin'. In Vermont, you will see a Dunkin' in like every other block. Okay, and then after that, we ended up at Hawke's Nest in upstate New York. By the time we got to Hawke's Nest, we had driven through 5 states in one day. We went from Massachusetts to Rhode Island to Connecticut, New York, and then New Jersey. What a day. But that's why it's so important that you have specific spots on your maps pinned, because you just can't predict the foliage and the fog. After we went to Hawke's Nest, we actually drove up to Latchwork State Park. This is also known as the Grand Canyon of the East, and there's actually a total combination of 66 trails here. No, we did not take all 66 trails, but you will get beautiful views of upstate New York, and it's $10 per vehicle. And then we went over to Toggenuk Falls. Toggenuk Falls is only a few steps away from the parking lot, and this is a sunset spot, and it will probably be a little bit busy, so make sure you get there in time to get your shots. But if you get there early enough, the hike to the bottom is 1.5 miles round trip. After that, we explored Watkins Glen State Park. This was a beautiful, beautiful walk with all the gorges. It's also a very popular destination spot, not just for photography purposes, but to just come and visit. Swung by Ithaca's Farmers Market. There are just so many vendors and small businesses that sell their products. I cannot get over how delicious these maple donuts were. I don't know where they're from, but if I can go back, I would just get like 5 dozen. I think we waited about like 20 minutes to get in. I don't remember. And then during the day, we went to Cumming Nature Center. We actually found out about the spot because someone that we met shooting the Toggenuk Falls told us to go there. Because we are crazy, we literally drove 3 hours to take photos here for 5 minutes to catch sunrise 2 hours away. But if you do have more than 5 minutes to spare, I would check it out and go on the trails, and there's a lot of information on how the nature center came to be. And then obviously to end off the trip, we drove over to Jersey and we caught sunrise in Hoboken. My favorite place in the whole entire world. And then after that, that was pretty much the end of the trip. Some of us went over to Manhattan and we chilled there for a bit. Oh, and if you do have time, we actually stopped by Rhode Island to go visit the Hobbit House. Now, tickets there are actually quite expensive. It's about $75 per person. And we only had 30 minutes to go see the house, take our photos. There is someone who is going to drive you there in a small golf cart from the receptionist, and he actually stays a few feet away from you as you're taking your photos of the house, but he's there obviously to drive you back and to tell you that your 30 minutes is up. Hopefully I've cleared the air on some of the questions that you guys might have had from my last video, but if you still are uncertain about certain things, to feel free to reach out to me. So the one advice that I can give you is that if you are a type A type of traveler and you need to have everything planned, that this might not be the best trip for you. I would probably just recommend and just try your absolute best to try to be flexible. Trust me, I used to be a type A traveler myself, and these kind of trips would have made me go bonkers. I would highly, highly, highly recommend bringing a drone. I think this is like a must. Last year I actually lost my drone at Lake Winnipesaukee. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's okay, it happens. But that's why you also don't go chase fall foliage with a DJI Mavic Mini. And again, when I started traveling, I had no idea that fall foliage was like a thing that people chased, but I'm super glad that I was able to do it to share with you guys. I will be planning on repurposing some of my autumn content, so don't forget to check that out after this video is done. Oh, and if you are chasing fall foliage this year, tag me in your shots and let me know that you got to my page from watching this video. I want to see your shots on chasing fall foliage and I will be sure to repost them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope these tips and these recommendations helped plan for your fall foliage trip, and I will see you guys in the next. Safe and happy travels, y'all.